Hello everybody, NinjaX the Enlightened Gamer here. Welcome back to a new Enlightened Vlogs. Just a warning, today's vlog is going to be controversial. We're dipping back into familiar territory here as we go to talk about religious symbolism in gaming. For the longest time, for a long time, religious symbolism in gaming, especially on Nintendo consoles, was something that was either non-existent or very ambiguous. For example, there is some arguable religious symbolism in Ocarina of Time and A Link to the Past, but it's Hyrule's religion. This camera is not centered. I'm just going to lean this way for the entire vlog because I'm not going to start this over again. Religious symbolism in gaming isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's a dividing thing. I know it's not like this other places in the world, but it is like it in most other places in the world. When it comes to religious belief or lack thereof, people are adamant. I have my own faith. It is of a Christian faith. I swear I will not try to push it in your guys' faces. And I have a few good reasons for that. There's always three things. First off, it wouldn't do any good because you find faith on your own, which is the second reason. You find your own faith. That's the only way to find faith. You can't force it on somebody else. And these horror stories we get about Christian families that basically torture each other until they pretend to become Christian is because of that. And third off, it just wouldn't be very nice. It's not a nice thing to do. This goes back to the modern indie scene. Video games have always capitalized off of shock value, at least as far back as I can remember. Dating all the way back to the original Doom. And even before that, possibly. That's just the way, the nature of the beast. That's just the nature of the business. Now, really quick, disclaimer. I don't support ultra gore and ultra violent, ultra sexualized games. I don't support them. Equally, you're not going to be like, well, Ninja won't play that game, but he will play this game, which has exactly the same amount of blah. Or, well, Ninja won't play this because it's gory, but he's going to play this when there's full frontal nudity. What's the matter with him? No. That's not the way I function. But this is the disclaimer. Even though I don't support games like this, I don't have any problem with other people enjoying them or liking them. Well, I do, but I've internalized it. And you're not going to change my mind on the matter. But I've also accepted that I'm probably not going to change your mind. And that's fine. Religious symbolism for or against any faith in a video game, especially if it's unexpected, can be really upsetting. Can be offensive. And it's okay to get offended by something, especially if you respect it. I mean, if I go to my first convention, or my first gaming convention, which I wasn't able to do this year, but next year, hope, and I were to meet some of my favorite YouTubers, and somehow they turned out to just be massive bullies or incredibly rotten cynics, I'd be disappointed. Especially because most of the YouTubers I support aren't like that. They're friendly, they're fun, they're lighthearted. Or they're deep and thoughtful. This cat is so distracting. Something needs to be done about this outbreak. I don't mind that there are games with religious symbolism now, especially bursting onto the indie scene. There's some very obvious positive Christian symbolism in Five Nights at Freddy's 3 near the secret ending. But there's also some very negative Christian symbolism in games like The Binding of Isaac. I don't find that game funny. I don't find it amusing. I find it incredibly dark, incredibly tragic, all too real at some points, but I would still support it, even though I don't agree with the views of the person who made it. And I really think it's sad that his situation has affected his values so severely. But I'm not, a disclaimer again, I'm not saying for a second that games like The Binding of Isaac don't deserve to exist and don't deserve to have a strong fan base or strong calling. Because from a mechanics standpoint, and from an artistic standpoint, it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. But you could have warned me. That's what the ESRB is. It's not a brand that says, kids can't play this. It's a warning label. If you get a pack of cigarettes, you'll see a warning on the side that says, warning, if you do this, you're going to die. If you get a 6-pack of alcohol, there's going to be a label, warning, don't drink and drive. This stuff will mess with your vision and mess with your reflexes. It's also illegal. If something is offensive to people in any way, the artist is not responsible for that. But he should be responsible for bringing it to your attention. There needs to be a warning label on games like this. Does it have to be the ESRB? No. A lot of people don't know. We see a game that looks like, hey, that looks similar to the Legend of Zelda games. And then things get out of hand. Now, I'm not saying that this is a bad game, and I can't state that enough. Because it actually looks really neat. I just don't find it funny in any way. In fact, I kind of find it distressing. But that's because my own personal faith is on the other side. It's on the other side of the train tracks. But I understand where people are coming from. Part of being enlightened, part of being intelligent, really, is being able to form your own ideas and opinions. And also understand others, how they came to theirs. And be able to respect their different opinions. Again, this goes back to science versus religion in a lot of ways, where it's important to ground yourself. You can find yourself on either side of the playing field, but it's absolutely vital, absolutely invaluable, that when you do, you understand the other people on the other side, how they might feel about it. When I played, but YouTubers need to be responsible for it too. YouTubers, you support the games you love, that's fine. I do certainly support the games that I love, and we bash the ones that we don't a lot of times. While I think a lot of the bashing is basically bullying at this point, kicking a game developer when they're down, just for the sheer joy of kicking. Where was I? The YouTubers have every right to talk that way. Ego Raptor had every right to say he didn't like Ocarina of Time because it wasn't like the original Zelda. And even with all the side questing, the plot is still very linear. This is where we as human beings have to stand up. But when it comes to religious symbolism in games, should it exist? Absolutely it should. But there should be a warning label. Now, people that I've been around, and I've been guilty of this myself, will always say, or will often say, who cares if that's offensive? It's their fault for getting offended. It's really not. It's really, really not. Imagine it this way. This is a hypothetical scenario. I'm not saying anybody's gone through it. But imagine that when you're 3 years old, you're abducted, you're kidnapped right off the street. For 10 years until you're a teenager, you're kept sequestered in a log cabin in the forest. And in that log cabin, you're subjected to rape, torture, hunger, and any other manner of torments. Let's say the person doing this is I don't know, a really big Republican. That's right, I'm going political with this because it's really no different. I myself find myself more neutral when it comes to politics. I really think it's all just a bunch of noise anyways. So I'm just using this as an example. Nobody, please nobody get offended, because I know there's an inverse to this as well. This person subjecting you to this constantly plays political talk shows, political radios. That's the only thing you hear for this 10-year period where you're being tortured. And finally, the police find you. Somebody finds you. Somebody tips the police off and you're rescued. And on your way to the hospital, because let's face it, if you're through that, you're going to have to be hospitalized and probably institutionalized for a while. You hear a person in the ambulance talking about the other side. The way that you've been conditioned to think because of your negative experience with a right-wing political activist. And he's talking purely left. There's the positive experience that ties it all in. Ultimately, we are who we are, but we are defined by our experiences as well. And if you go through a nightmare, things that remind you of that nightmare won't just scare you. They'll make you sick to your stomach. They'll make you want to throw up. And hearing people that you idolize revering aspects of that nightmare will make you feel even worse. It'll make you want to shut away the entire world, to cloister yourself. Fellow YouTubers, if any of you are listening, heed this warning. You need to let people know. You need to let people know not only if the game you're playing has graphic content, sexual or violent content, vulgar words, but you also need to let them know if it has religious content. And if it does, what brand. I sure know that I'll be doing it from now on. Please, please, don't let this continue to happen. And as always, stay enlightened.